For generations, we've been fed a comforting narrative that good leaders are always kind, just, and morally exemplary. We're taught that true leadership springs from a benevolent heart, fairness in judgment, and an unwavering commitment to popular approval. We admire those who lead with compassion, empathy, and a gentle hand, believing these virtues are the bedrock of effective rule. But what if this cherished ideal, this very vision of the virtuous leader, is not only impractical but, in many critical situations, actively detrimental to effective governance and the secure pursuit of meaningful objectives? What if the true path to genuine, lasting influence and control demands a deliberate, even painful, turning away from these deeply ingrained moral expectations? Niccolò Machiavelli, writing over 5 centuries ago amidst the relentless political turmoil of Renaissance Italy, offered a stark, unvarnished look at power as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. He wasn't interested in abstract moral philosophy for its own sake, but in practical strategies for acquiring, maintaining, and exercising authority. He pulled back the curtain on the brutal realities of human nature and political necessity, revealing truths most of us find profoundly unsettling, truths that challenge the very fabric of our modern moral sensibilities and our romanticized view of leadership. And at the heart of his controversial, yet undeniably influential, wisdom lies a statement that continues to echo with chilling clarity, a line that directly confronts the comfortable illusions we hold about leadership. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Consider that for a moment, and truly let its implications sink in. Not better to be admired, not better to be respected, but explicitly, unequivocally, better to be feared. This isn't a casual observation born of cynicism, it's a cold, hard, calculated insight into the mechanisms of control, rooted in Machiavelli's keen observation of human behavior. Machiavelli argues with relentless logic that love, being a bond of obligation, is a fickle sentiment. Men, he observed, will break these bonds whenever it suits their personal advantage, especially when danger looms or personal gain is at stake. But fear, he posited, is maintained by a dread of punishment, a constant and powerful motivator that, unlike affection, rarely abandons them. In times of crisis, rebellion, or existential threat to your leadership, which bond would you rather rely on to ensure unwavering loyalty and obedience? The fleeting sentiment of affection, easily discarded, or the unwavering, self-preserving grip of terror? This distinction, he insists, is not about cruelty for cruelty's sake, but about understanding the most reliable and potent levers of human action. This book, The Prince, is not a feel-good guide promising universal success through positive thinking or popular consensus. In fact, it might just be the stark opposite of what contemporary self-help gurus advocate. It asks a deeply uncomfortable, yet profoundly important question of you, the listener, a question that cuts to the core of your values and ambitions. Do you truly want to be a good person, praised for your benevolence and virtue, but perhaps limited in your ability to decisively shape events and achieve significant goals? Or do you want to be a wildly effective leader, capable of securing power, maintaining order, and achieving your objectives, even if it means making decisions that sacrifice popular adoration, defy conventional morality, and earn you the lasting, though perhaps grudging, respect of those you govern? Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear is not a gentle philosophical rumination or a comforting fable. This is your red pill moment regarding the true, often ruthless, nature of power. It will challenge every comfortable assumption you hold about leadership, morality, and the paths to genuine influence. Machiavelli invites you to look past the comforting fictions. We tell ourselves the stories of heroes and villains, of clear right and wrong, and to confront the often ugly, always efficient, machinery of how influence is truly gained, fiercely held, and inevitably lost. He will reveal that the most effective leaders aren't necessarily the ones who earn our affection or our praise, but the ones who understand how to expertly manipulate the most powerful motivators of all self-interest, ambition, and the primal instinct for survival. Are you ready to strip away the veneer and see the world, and leadership, for what it really is? Are you ready to discover the uncomfortable truth? Imagine, for a moment, the bustling streets of Renaissance Florence. A city of breathtaking art and brilliant minds, yes, but also a cauldron of political intrigue, shifting alliances, and constant threats of invasion. Princes rose and fell, states changed hands with ruthless efficiency, and the very concept of stability felt like a fleeting dream. It was into this tumultuous world that Niccolò Machiavelli, a seasoned diplomat and statesman, found himself cast out of power, exiled to his small farm. He wasn't a villain plotting in the shadows, nor a philosopher detached from the messy realities of life. Instead, he was a man who had spent years observing the raw mechanics of power, seeing firsthand how states survived or perished in an unforgiving landscape. Machiavelli was, at his core, a desperate diplomat. Stripped of his public office, he poured his lifetime of observations into a letter to a new ruler, hoping to offer a guide, a map for navigating this treacherous terrain. This letter, which we now know as the Prince, wasn't born of malice, but of a profound, almost heartbreaking, concern for his beloved Florence and for the stability of Italy. It was his truth, stark and unvarnished, spoken directly to power from a place of experience and necessity. He wrote not of how leaders should behave in an ideal world, but how they must often act in the real one, where human nature is imperfect and circumstances are rarely kind. Our journey through this timeless work begins with a commitment to strip away the archaic language and the historical dust that often obscures Machiavelli's profound insights. The original text, though brilliant, can feel distant, its examples rooted in a world far removed from our own. Here, in this audiobook, we aim to peel back those layers, to reveal the timeless strategy, the underlying principles of leadership, power, and human nature that are as relevant today as they were 5 centuries ago. We're not just translating words, we're translating wisdom, making it accessible, immediate, and deeply personal. Think of this as a humanized approach, designed to connect you directly with the essence of Machiavelli's thought, understanding his practical advice through the lens of a keen observer, rather than a moralist. So, let us be clear from the outset, this exploration of the Prince is not an invitation to become tyrannical, manipulative, or evil. Far from it. That common misconception has often overshadowed the true brilliance of Machiavelli's analysis. Instead, our goal here is to provide you with a realist's guidebook, a toolkit for understanding how power functions, how decisions are truly made, and how stability can be achieved and maintained in a chaotic world. It's about survival, yes, but also about leadership, resilience, and the tough choices that leaders, in any field, inevitably face. Whether you are navigating a business, leading a team, or simply trying to understand the dynamics of human interaction, Machiavelli offers an unflinching mirror to reality. He doesn't tell us what we want to hear, but what we need to know to truly grasp the levers of influence and the enduring challenges of human nature. This is a journey into the practical heart of leadership, preparing you not for an ideal world, but for the world as it truly is. In the world of states and dominion, we observe 2 fundamental forms: republics, where power resides with the people, and principalities, where it rests with a single ruler. Within these principalities, there's a crucial distinction to be made right from the outset. Are they hereditary, passed down through a lineage, or are they entirely new, recently acquired? This difference, as we shall see, is paramount, especially when considering the formidable challenge of maintaining power versus the relative ease of simply inheriting it. Consider for a moment a hereditary state, one that has been governed by the same family for generations. Here, the task of the prince is significantly less arduous. The established order, the long-standing customs, and the familiarity of the ruling family all contribute to a remarkable stability. People are accustomed to their rulers, they expect the lineage to continue. The prince merely needs to maintain the status quo, adhering to the ways of his ancestors and adapting cautiously to circumstances. So long as he does not deviate too drastically from the traditional path, he is likely to retain his power. Even if a hereditary prince possesses only average ability, he will probably hold on to his state unless some extraordinary and overwhelming force deprives him of it. And should he lose it, a swift reversal of fortune would likely see him regain it, because the people are naturally predisposed to the old order. There's less friction, less resentment, and fewer reasons for his subjects to desire a change. Now, Contrast this with a newly acquired principality. This is where the true difficulties arise, a situation demanding a far greater measure of skill, foresight, and even ruthlessness. When a new ruler takes charge, he inevitably faces a barrage of challenges and inherent instability. This is because people, in their short-sightedness, often welcome a new master, believing that any change will bring improvement. They are frequently swayed by the hope of bettering their condition, and this often drives them to take up arms against their current lord. However, this initial enthusiasm is almost always a double-edged sword for the new prince. For a new ruler simply cannot avoid giving offense to his new subjects, particularly those who helped him gain power. Think about it: to establish his authority, he must inevitably injure others, perhaps by imposing new taxes, disrupting old customs, or reorganizing the administration. Furthermore, those who assisted him in his ascent often expect significant rewards or positions, which he cannot fully provide without displeasing others or exhausting his own resources. You find yourself in a bind. You cannot satisfy those who put you in power to the degree they expect, and you cannot be firm with them because you owe them. On the other hand, you also have those whom you harmed in the process of conquest, and they will naturally be your enemies. The consequence is that you have alienated both those you offended and those whom you cannot fully satisfy, leaving you with few true friends. This inherent tension means that even with the strongest armies, a new prince will always require the goodwill of the people in the newly conquered territory to truly hold on to it. The initial hope for improvement, which led them to support the change, quickly fades as they experience the inevitable hardships and disruptions that come with new leadership. The promises made, or simply the expectations generated, rarely materialize to the degree anticipated. This leads to profound disappointment and often a longing for the previous order, however imperfect it may have seemed at the time. Therefore, maintaining a new principality is a profoundly different and more perilous endeavor than simply presiding over an inherited one. It demands a constant vigilance, a readiness to act decisively, and a deep understanding of human nature, especially its fickle tendency to desire change while simultaneously fearing its consequences. In our previous chapter, we laid the groundwork for understanding the types of principalities. Now, we turn our attention inward, exploring the very heart of a state's stability, the intricate dance between its leaders and its people. This is Chapter 2, The Foundation of Power, where we analyze where true political stability ultimately comes from. Machiavelli observes that every city is, at its core, divided. From this division arise two distinct forces: the powerful elite, whom he calls the great, and the vast majority, the people. These two groups have fundamentally opposing desires, and it is this inherent conflict that shapes the political landscape. The great, driven by their nature, wish to dominate, to oppress, and to command. Their ambition is boundless, always seeking to exert more power over others. The people, on the other hand, harbor a much simpler and more honest desire. They wish not to be oppressed, not to be commanded by the great, and to live in security. These contrasting ambitions inevitably lead to tension, struggle, and often, to political upheaval. A prince, upon taking power, must choose which of these forces to align with. Machiavelli unequivocally advises that building one's foundation upon the common people is not only safer but also wiser. Consider their motives. The people's desire not to be oppressed is a just and reasonable one. They seek security, not dominion. Therefore, a prince who respects this desire will find them loyal and steadfast. In contrast, those who rise to power through the support of the great face a much more perilous journey. When a prince is elevated by the elite, he finds himself surrounded by individuals who believe they are his equals. They feel entitled to influence, to a share of power, and to have their ambitions served. This makes it incredibly difficult for the prince to command them effectively. He is seen not as a true sovereign, but merely as a tool or a first among equals. Such a prince becomes indebted to his powerful backers, forced to cater to their insatiable demands. Should he fail to satisfy them, or should his power waver, these very same elites are the first to turn against him. Their loyalty is conditional, based purely on their self-interest and the benefits they can extract. It is far easier, Machiavelli explains, to satisfy the many who only wish to avoid oppression than it is to satisfy the few who constantly demand to oppress. Moreover, a prince who relies on the great is vulnerable from within. He cannot control them, nor can he easily change their allegiances. The great are fewer in number, but their capacity for harm and conspiracy is much greater due to their influence and resources. They can abandon the prince, conspire against him, or actively work for his downfall, often with little repercussion amongst their peers. A prince supported by the people, however, has a completely different dynamic. He is surrounded by those who are willing to obey him, and whose desires are simply to live without fear. They are less prone to conspiracy and easier to manage, as their goals are limited and non-aggressive. Their sheer numbers provide an immense source of strength and legitimacy. When the people are well disposed towards their ruler, they become his most formidable defense, a living fortress against internal and external threats. Even if a prince initially finds some of the great to be hostile, Machiavelli notes that it is possible to win them over, provided they are not naturally predatory or overly ambitious. But those who are truly powerful and yet refuse to commit their loyalty are indeed dangerous. It is crucial to distinguish between those who act out of weakness or fear and those who act out of calculated opposition. Ultimately, a prince's most secure foundation for power rests not in the transient allegiances of the powerful few, but in the unwavering support of the grateful many. For in the hearts of the people lies the true strength and stability of any principality. As we consider the foundations upon which a state is built and maintained, it becomes clear that good laws, however wise, are only half the story. A prince must also secure his dominion through strong defenses, and it is here, in the realm of arms and armies, that many rulers falter, often to their ultimate ruin. The necessity of self-reliance in matters of defense is paramount, for relying on others' strength is to build upon shifting sands, leaving your state vulnerable to every gust of misfortune. Let us first examine a common, yet utterly flawed, approach: the use of mercenary soldiers. I tell you, these hired forces are not merely useless, but deeply dangerous. Their sole motivation is pay, not unwavering loyalty to you, nor profound love for your country, nor any inherent sense of duty. In times of peace, they devour your resources and deplete your treasury, only to abandon you at the first sign of war. They are full of bravado amongst themselves, yet reveal themselves as cowards when confronted by a determined enemy. They have no personal stake in your victory or defeat, no skin in the game. When the true moment for battle arrives, their commitment wavers, their discipline dissolves, and their courage evaporates. Cities and states that rely on mercenaries can never be truly secure, for such armies are disunited, ambitious, undisciplined, and faithless. They are prone to desertion or betrayal, and their only constraint is the fear of their commanders, which is rarely strong enough to bind them when faced with real danger. The ruin of Italy, for instance, has been profoundly brought about by nothing other than this pervasive reliance on mercenary arms, which have allowed foreign powers to invade and conquer with alarming ease and devastating consequences. Even more perilous than mercenaries are what we call auxiliary troops, those armies borrowed from a powerful neighbor or ally to come to your aid. While mercenaries might ultimately fail to defend you, auxiliary forces, should they achieve victory, will often turn their newfound power against you. If they lose, you are, of course, utterly destroyed alongside them. But if they win, you become their prisoner, deeply indebted to their strength, and thereby subject to their will and influence. You have effectively exchanged one danger for another, potentially a far worse and more insidious one. Consider the historical examples. Emperor Louis XII of France, in his attempt to conquer Genoa, used auxiliary troops from the Pope and Spain. While he succeeded in his immediate goal, his reliance on these foreign forces critically weakened his own position and made him dangerously dependent on his allies, ultimately costing him far more in sovereignty and future stability than it initially gained. A truly wise prince understands that to call in auxiliaries is to walk willingly into a trap, as their fundamental loyalty is to their own ruler, not genuinely to yours. They come to serve their own agenda, not truly to save you, making them a force to be deeply mistrusted. This brings us directly to the core Machiavellian rule, a truth absolutely fundamental to any lasting principality. A prince must possess his own arms to be truly secure. These are armies composed of your own subjects, your own citizens, commanded by your own generals. Only then can you be certain of their unwavering loyalty, their inherent discipline, and their unyielding willingness to fight and die for your particular cause and the survival of your state. A state cannot be considered stable, secure, or truly free if it does not have its own military, one that it can rely upon without question or reservation. Good laws and good arms are intrinsically linked, inseparable, for without the latter, the former cannot be effectively enforced or defended. All other armies, be they mercenary or auxiliary, are either useless, profoundly dangerous, or indeed, both. They are like beautiful armor that fits another man perfectly, but chafes, hinders, and ultimately burdens the one who actually attempts to wear it. Therefore, a prince who lacks an army of his own, built from the very fabric and spirit of his state, is inherently weak. He is at the mercy of unpredictable fortune and the potentially hostile will of others, never truly master of his own destiny. The only truly effective, secure, and honorable defense for any prince lies in his own forces, raised from within his own dominion. This is the ultimate, undeniable lesson to command true security. One must unequivocally command one's own arms. For centuries, thinkers have imagined ideal states and perfect rulers, guided solely by virtue and justice. It is a beautiful vision, a world where everyone acts honorably and leaders are paragons of moral perfection. This is the dream, the aspiration many hold dear. However, a stark reality confronts any leader who chooses to navigate the world based purely on such noble, yet often impractical, ideals. The gap between how one ought to live and how one actually lives is vast. If a prince, in pursuit of perfect goodness, insists on acting virtuously in every single instance, he will inevitably find himself at a severe disadvantage. He will be undone, for he operates among many who are not good, who do not share his unwavering commitment to virtue. Consider a ruler who always tells the absolute truth, never breaks a promise, is unfailingly generous, and prioritizes mercy above all else. While these qualities sound admirable, their practical implications are ruinous. Such a prince might be easily deceived, his honesty exploited. His generosity could deplete his resources, making him appear weak. His constant mercy could breed disrespect and rebellion. In a world of cunning and self-serving individuals, the perfectly good prince becomes an easy target. His ruin is not just a possibility, but a certainty. It becomes clear then that a wise and effective prince cannot always adhere to what is traditionally considered good. He must, at times, deviate from conventional morality. He must learn to act not good when circumstances demand it. This isn't a call to embrace evil for its own sake, but rather an acknowledgement of leadership's harsh necessities. The very survival of his state, and the well-being of his people, often depends on his willingness to adapt, to be flexible, and to employ methods deemed undesirable. The prince, therefore, must be pragmatic. To maintain his state, he will frequently be forced to act contrary to faith, charity, humanity, and religion. This is because fortune and changing events compel him. He cannot abandon the good when possible, but he must know how to embrace evil when necessity requires it. This is the crucial, often uncomfortable, truth of effective leadership, the ability to discern when and how to depart from the ideal, for the greater good of stability and power. This pivot, from lofty ideals to gritty realities, forms the very foundation of understanding effective governance. It moves from imagining perfect rulers in perfect worlds to grappling with the messy, unpredictable, and often morally ambiguous challenges of real leadership. It is about understanding the effective truth, not how we wish things were, but how they truly are, and how one must act within that reality to succeed. In this chapter, we consider the quality of generosity and its true impact on a prince's reputation. While generosity might initially seem to cultivate admiration and loyalty, Machiavelli presents a profound paradox. Pursuing true generosity as a princely virtue often leads not to esteem, but to ruin. To understand this, consider the demands of generosity. A prince committed to being seen as liberal must constantly expend his resources. While this might earn immediate favor, it is unsustainable. Funds quickly deplete, forcing the prince to impose heavier taxes or confiscate property to continue his lavish spending. This inevitably alienates his subjects. Acts intended to endear him become sources of hatred and contempt, making him burdensome, despised, and crucially vulnerable. Thus, initial generosity transforms. The prince who once showered gifts is forced to strip his subjects, becoming hated by the many he oppressed, and despised by those who see his inability to sustain his image. This cycle prevents him from achieving great deeds or defending his state effectively, having squandered the goodwill and financial stability of his people. He finds himself impoverished, despised, and known for extortion, not magnificence. Machiavelli argues that a prince should not fear being labeled a miser. Parsimony is a strategic imperative. A miserly prince manages his affairs prudently, living within his means and avoiding the need to plunder his subjects. This disciplined approach builds up reserves, allowing him to defend the state without imposing excessive burdens during war or crisis. He can fund grand projects and maintain armies without extortion, thereby preserving his populace's loyalty and resources. In the long term, this approach proves superior. When a critical need arises to lead an expedition or defend against an enemy, the careful prince funds these operations from his accumulated wealth, sparing his citizens. His subjects, recognizing that his previous tight-fistedness protected them and ensured state security, will re-evaluate him. What was once seen as a flaw becomes a virtue, as his economy spared them taxes and protected them from enemies, enhancing his reputation for wisdom. Therefore, reputation here is about strategic asset management, ensuring the long-term stability and security of the state and its people. The miserly prince, though lacking immediate popular applause, gains a more valuable reputation for safeguarding his dominion. He is seen as one who protects, not burdens. His reputation rests on reliability, foresight, and state strength, not an unsustainable facade of extravagance. Through this careful stewardship, a prince truly avoids hatred and contempt, securing his power more effectively than any fleeting act of liberality ever could. Welcome to Chapter 6, where we confront perhaps the most challenging aspect of princely rule, the strategic application of harsh measures. Machiavelli doesn't shy from difficult truths, here delving into cruelty well used. Imagine a ruler tasked with securing a new state, rife with danger. How does one bring order swiftly? Machiavelli suggests certain acts of necessary cruelty, employed once, at the very beginning of a new regime. These measures are taken from absolute necessity, not whim. Applied decisively, all at once, their purpose is to establish a secure foundation, then cease. The intention remove threats, quell uprisings, and thereafter, govern beneficially, allowing past harshness to fade. In contrast, cruelty badly used involves the slow, increasing, inconsistent application of harshness over time. Such a prince never truly secures his position. Each new oppression only alienates his people further, making them feel perpetually unsafe and resentful. This ruler constantly needs his hand on the sword, rather than relying on his subjects' acceptance. This cruelty generates not respect, but fear mixed with hatred, an incredibly dangerous combination. This brings us to a timeless question: is it better for a prince to be loved or to be feared? Machiavelli, the realist, argues that while ideally both, if a choice must be made, it is far safer to be feared. His reasoning lies in human nature. Men, he asserts, are generally ungrateful, fickle, deceitful, eager to avoid danger. They will offer their lives when threats are distant, but turn against you when danger materializes. Love, a bond of obligation, men will break when it suits them. Fear, however, is preserved by the dread of punishment, a constant, potent motivator. This is especially true for a prince commanding an army. To maintain discipline and unity in war, soldiers must fear their commander more than the enemy. A loved but not feared general will find his troops disbanding at hardship. However, Machiavelli adds a vital caveat: while safer to be feared, a prince must, above all else, avoid being hated. To be feared without hatred is the ultimate balance. How to achieve this? Rigorously keep your hands off subjects' property and women. These are what men hold dearest. Infringement breeds deep, lasting hatred. Furthermore, take a life only with manifest justification and evident cause. Arbitrary executions or property confiscation without clear reason inevitably lead to resentment, perception of tyranny, and hatred. When punishment has clear cause, like treason or grave crime, men are less likely to resent the prince, even if they fear him. They understand the necessity, preserving their own safety and state security. Thus, the astute prince understands that while he must inspire fear to maintain order and protect his realm, he must never cross into inspiring hatred. He must be seen as a stern but just protector, not a capricious tyrant. This is the essence of cruelty, well used. Friends, in our journey through the art of leadership, we arrive at a truly fascinating, if perhaps unsettling, concept: the necessity for a prince to embrace a dual nature. He must learn to act not only as a man but also, when circumstances demand, as a beast. And within this bestial realm, there are two creatures whose qualities he must skillfully blend: the fox and the lion. Why these two? The lion, you see, possesses immense strength. It can terrify and fend off the wolves, a clear metaphor for the enemies who threaten a prince's rule and his state. A leader must, at times, display such formidable power that his adversaries are simply too intimidated to challenge him. Yet, strength alone is insufficient. For while the lion can intimidate, it is not always astute enough to avoid hidden dangers. This is where the fox enters the picture. The fox, with its cunning and acute senses, excels at recognizing traps. It navigates deceitful terrain, spots snares, and outsmarts those who would ensnare it. A prince, therefore, must possess this foxy shrewdness to discern plots, anticipate betrayals, and avoid falling victim to the schemes of others. To be truly effective, a leader cannot simply roar, he must also be subtle and clever. The ability to be both a mighty lion and a wily fox is what allows a prince to overcome obstacles that pure force or pure cunning alone might miss. This profound understanding of human and political nature leads us to a critical, often debated principle: the question of a leader honoring their word. Many believe a prince should always keep his promises, a noble ideal indeed. However, we must confront the harsh reality: men are inherently fickle, prone to dishonesty, and quick to break faith with you. Therefore, a shrewd prince cannot, in good conscience, honor his word if it puts him at a disadvantage, and if the reasons that prompted him to give that word no longer exist. To do so would be foolish, even self-destructive. In truth, a prince should always find a plausible excuse for breaking a promise when necessary. There will never be a shortage of legitimate reasons to color his non-observance. Experience teaches us that those princes who have mastered the art of deceit have ultimately achieved great things, overcoming those who relied solely on sincerity. Thus, we arrive at the art of simulation and dissimulation. A prince must master the appearance of virtue, even if his actions occasionally stray from it. He must appear to be compassionate, trustworthy, humane, upright, and devout. Indeed, he should be these things when possible. But, crucially, he must cultivate a mind so adaptable that when the winds of fortune change, or when necessity compels him, he knows how to turn to the contrary. He must be capable of acting without these virtues, if the survival of his state demands it. The key lies in understanding that most men judge by what they see, not by what they truly feel or know. The common people are always impressed by appearances, and by the outcome of things. In the political arena, where very few can truly see beneath the surface, a prince who masterfully plays this role will seldom lack supporters. For in the end, when the safety and well-being of the state are at stake, the means are always deemed honorable, and the result is what truly matters. Now, having considered the qualities that garner praise, we must turn our attention to those pitfalls a prince must actively avoid, namely, being despised and hated. For as long as he steers clear of these two dangers, he has fulfilled his duty, and any other fault will not cause him significant harm. A prince primarily invites contempt when he is perceived as fickle, superficial, effeminate, cowardly, or indecisive. These are the traits he must, at all costs, guard against. He must strive to project an image that is the absolute opposite of these weaknesses. His actions must always convey grandeur, courage, gravity, and strength. In all private dealings between prince and subject, his decisions must be irrevocable. He must establish a reputation for himself such that no one would ever dream of deceiving or circumventing him. This steadfastness creates respect. A prince who achieves such a reputation will be greatly esteemed. And when a prince is highly esteemed, it becomes more difficult to conspire against him, and more challenging for external enemies to attack him. They will hesitate, knowing that such a prince is not easily deceived, and has the support of his people. Indeed, a prince has two primary fears: internal conspiracies from his subjects, and external aggression from foreign powers. He can defend himself against the latter by having good arms and good allies, and if he possesses good arms, he will always have good allies. Regarding internal conspiracies, a prince is safe when he avoids being hated or despised by the general populace, and when the people are content with his rule. This is one of the most powerful defenses a prince can have against plots. For conspirators generally believe that the death of the prince will be welcomed by the people. But when they know that killing the prince would only anger the populace, they will hesitate greatly before undertaking such a dangerous venture. The difficulties for a conspirator are endless. There is the risk of discovery during the planning, the danger of betrayal by an accomplice, and the uncertainty of success during the execution. If the conspirator also faces the guaranteed hostility of the people after the deed, he will be deterred. History shows us that conspiracies are frequent, but few succeed. This is because a conspirator cannot act alone, nor can he seek companions from those he believes are discontent. And as soon as you reveal your intention to a malcontent, you give him the means to become content by betraying you. For he knows that by revealing the plot, he will gain certain rewards, while by joining you, he faces certain dangers. Thus, if a prince can keep his people satisfied, a conspirator will find it extremely difficult to find willing accomplices. So, the greatest safeguard against conspiracies is to avoid being hated by the general population. If the prince incurs the people's hatred, any conspirator will be emboldened, believing that the populace will support his actions. But if the people are well disposed towards the prince, the conspirator will lack the crucial popular backing needed for success. Therefore, a wise prince must consider how to manage his state so that his subjects will always, and in every circumstance, need the state and himself. If he can achieve this, they will always remain faithful to him. By demonstrating his strength through decisive action, and by securing the contentment of his people, a prince effectively builds an impenetrable fortress against both contempt and hatred, ensuring his stability and the longevity of his rule. My friends, of all the challenges that confront a prince, few are as insidious and as potentially ruinous as the management of his advisors, and specifically, the danger posed by flatterers. It is a pitfall that has brought down many a promising ruler, eroding their judgment from within far more subtly than any external enemy. The world, alas, is teeming with men who are eager to please, who would rather tell you what you wish to hear than what you desperately need to know. These are the flatterers, the sycophants, who, with their sweet words and agreeable falsehoods, paint a distorted picture of your state and your own capabilities. If a prince is not exceedingly prudent, he can easily become ensnared by their praise, believing himself to be all-wise and all-powerful, simply because no one dares to tell him otherwise. Such a prince will inevitably be misled, losing touch with reality, until it is too late to correct his course. He finds himself isolated in an echo chamber, cut off from the harsh truths essential for effective governance. Consider the grave consequences. A prince surrounded by flatterers will never receive honest counsel. His decisions will be based on inaccurate information, his policies will be built on sand, and his actions will fail to address the true needs and threats facing his dominion. He will be loved by none but his fawning courtiers, and despised by the people he rules, ultimately losing their respect and, in time, his very authority. To avoid such a desolate fate, a prince must understand how to cultivate an environment where truth can flourish, even if it is uncomfortable. The remedy lies in establishing a precise and unwavering protocol for receiving advice. A wise prince should choose a small, select group of men, those known for their wisdom, integrity, and frankness, and grant them the distinct privilege of speaking candidly. This inner circle should be composed of individuals who prioritize the welfare of the state above their personal advancement. Critically, these trusted advisors should be encouraged to offer their honest opinions, but only when explicitly asked. If you permit anyone and everyone to volunteer their thoughts, or if you take offense at honest feedback, you will quickly find your court reverting to flattery, as no one will risk incurring your displeasure by speaking a disagreeable truth. When you do seek counsel from these chosen few, it is paramount that you listen intently and without emotion. Encourage them to speak freely, without any fear of reprisal, and accept their honest critiques, however sharp or contrary they may be to your initial inclinations. Let them understand that while their opinions are highly valued, the ultimate decision and the responsibility for that decision rests solely with you. After hearing all perspectives, weigh their words with calm reason, and make your own judgment. A prince must never appear easily offended by truth, for that immediately closes the door to all useful counsel. Instead, project an air of calm authority, showing that you consider all viewpoints before settling on the wisest course of action. Yet let us not be mistaken, the quality of the advice a prince receives, no matter how carefully structured the system, ultimately reflects his own wisdom. It is a profound misconception to believe that merely surrounding oneself with wise counselors automatically confers wisdom upon the prince. On the contrary, a prince who is not inherently prudent will never truly be well advised. He will lack the judgment to select truly capable advisors in the first place, or the discernment to differentiate genuine, valuable counsel from clever, self-serving flattery. He might even dismiss excellent advice if it conflicts with his own preconceived notions, born of ignorance. Good counsel, therefore, is not the source of a prince's wisdom, but rather an outcome and a symptom of it. It is your inherent sagacity that allows you to choose the right people, to ask the right questions, to listen effectively, and to synthesize disparate opinions into a coherent and effective strategy. A prince who is not himself wise cannot guide his counselors, but rather becomes their tool. He will either fall prey to conflicting advice, unable to make a firm decision, or he will be exploited by cunning individuals who recognize his lack of foresight. Therefore, cultivate your own prudence above all else. Rely on your own judgment, informed and sharpened by the carefully elicited truths of your trusted inner circle. It is this combination, your personal wisdom married with a meticulously managed system for honest feedback, that forms the true bedrock of stable rule and ensures that you navigate the treacherous waters of power with foresight and security. In this manner, good counsel will always spring from the prudence of the prince himself, and not the other way around. Many, even in our own time, hold the belief that the affairs of the world are so governed by fortune and by God that human prudence and effort can do little to change them. This leads some to conclude that it is futile to strive, and better to simply let fate take its course. It is a view that could easily make one abandon all hope, or at least, all active endeavor. Now, while I might be inclined to lean towards this opinion myself, having observed how often events unfold beyond human foresight, I also believe that our free will must not be entirely surrendered. To deny our agency completely would be to undermine the very purpose of wisdom and leadership. Therefore, I contend that fortune, that unpredictable mistress of circumstance, controls only about half of our actions, leaving the other half, or perhaps a little less, to be governed by us. To make this clearer, let us imagine fortune as a mighty, overflowing river. When it rages, it floods the plains, sweeps away trees and buildings, and scours the land. Everyone flees before it, unable to resist its fury. Its power is immense, and its destruction seems inevitable. But consider this: while a river is indeed destructive when in flood, it doesn't always rage. In calmer times, when the waters are low, people can build dikes and embankments, dig canals, and construct protections. They can take measures to channel the water, to mitigate its force, and to prevent it from causing widespread devastation when it inevitably rises again. So it is with fortune. Her force is visible where there is no organized power to resist her. She directs her fury where she knows no preparations, no defenses, have been made to hold her in check. Look at Italy in my time, a country without dikes, without embankments, a land that, if it had been properly prepared, would not have suffered the torrents of foreign invasion that swept over it. This lack of foresight, this failure to build fortifications when the times were peaceful, left her utterly exposed when the storms arrived. A prudent prince, then, must act during times of calm to prepare for the inevitable tempests. A prince who relies solely on fortune will be ruined when fortune changes. Yet, a prince who successfully adapts his methods to the shifting times will flourish. The difficulty, however, lies in human nature. We are often reluctant to change our ways, even when circumstances demand it. A man who has always prospered by acting cautiously finds it hard to suddenly become impetuous. Conversely, one accustomed to boldness struggles to adopt prudence. And so, because we rarely adjust our nature to the demands of the moment, we succeed when our methods align with fortune's demands, and fail when they clash. This brings us to a crucial point about how to deal with fortune, particularly when her mood is uncertain. I believe it is always better to be impetuous than cautious. Fortune, like a woman, must be handled with firmness, even boldness, if you wish to keep her under control. She is more readily swayed by those who are daring and decisive than by those who proceed coolly and with calculated caution. Why is this? Because she favors the young, the audacious, the less circumspect. They are more fierce, more impetuous, and they command her with greater audacity. The cautious man, by his very nature, often misses the opportune moment, hesitates when action is required, and thus allows fortune to slip through his fingers. He waits for the perfect moment that never truly arrives. But the bold, the impetuous, those who seize the initiative, are more likely to bend fortune to their will, to force her hand, and to achieve their aims. Thus, while we acknowledge the immense power of circumstance, let us never forget that a significant part of our destiny remains within our grasp. It is a constant interplay between the inevitable currents of fate and the strength of our own will, our foresight, and above all, our readiness to act decisively when opportunity or necessity calls. We have explored at length the ways in which states can be acquired, and how a prince might best preserve his newfound dominion. Yet, it is equally vital to understand why so many rulers lose their kingdoms, often with astonishing speed. The failure to maintain a state, once possessed, is a common tragedy in history, and the lessons drawn from these downfalls are perhaps the most potent for any aspiring or reigning prince. Consider the example of the numerous Italian princes of our time who have lost their states. When we examine their unfortunate circumstances, we do not find that they lacked military strength, at least not initially. Many had strong armies and powerful alliances. Their true failing, more often than not, lay not in a sudden overwhelming force, but in a deeper, more insidious weakness that festered during times of apparent peace and stability. These princes made the grave error of neglecting their foundations when the skies were clear. They never considered what they might do in times of adversity, but rather in prosperity, believed that nothing could possibly threaten them. They failed to build their defenses robustly, both militarily and politically, to secure the loyalty of their subjects through good governance and prudent policies, and to cultivate a force capable of standing on its own. Instead, they relied on alliances, on mercenary armies, or on the hope that someone else would come to their aid should trouble arise. This reliance on others, rather than on their own virtue and strength, proved to be their undoing. When the storm finally broke, these unprepared princes were astonished by its fury. They suddenly found themselves without a secure base, without the love of their people, and without the means to defend themselves adequately. In their hour of need, they could only flee, or surrender, and hope for a merciful conqueror. And what excuse do they often offer for their ruin? They blame fortune, that fickle lady who bestows her gifts and her curses seemingly at random. But this is a hollow and self-serving complaint, for true fortune, in Machiavelli's view, only wields its power where virtue and preparedness are absent. A prince should never, when times are dire, attribute his failure to fortune, but rather to his own sloth. He should have foreseen the storm during the calm, and prepared his defenses accordingly. It is a common human failing to hope that if you fall, someone will raise you up. Yet, such a rescue rarely comes, and if it does, it is seldom to your advantage, for your preservation will depend on the power of another, not your own. Those defenses alone are good, are certain, are lasting, which depend on yourself and your own valor. A wise prince, therefore, must always be vigilant. He must never, even for a moment, cease to consider the possibility of future troubles and prepare for them with all his might. During times of peace, he should build his fortresses, secure his alliances, win the affection of his people, and cultivate a strong, loyal army of his own citizens. He should, in essence, make himself so formidable that no enemy would dare to attack him lightly, and if attacked, he would have the means and the will to resist effectively. The ultimate lesson from the decline of states is this: rely on your own strength, prepare incessantly, and never blame fortune for what is, in truth, a failure of foresight and action. For a prince who cannot defend himself, or relies on others to do so, is a prince destined for ruin. We arrive now at a remarkable shift in Machiavelli's discourse, a profound moment when the detached, analytical observer steps forward, his voice imbued with fervent, almost desperate passion. After dissecting the mechanics of power, the cold calculations of statecraft, he casts aside the academic lens to make a direct and deeply personal plea. This isn't merely another chapter of political theory, it is an urgent cry from the heart of a patriot, a powerful testament to the ultimate purpose he believes power should serve. It is a moment of raw emotion, a pivot from objective analysis to a passionate call to arms. For centuries, Machiavelli observes with a heavy heart, Italy has suffered. Divided into squabbling city-states, plundered by foreign invaders, and relentlessly trampled by barbarian armies, she has become little more than a perpetual battleground, a land aching for a redeemer. Imagine her condition, he implores us, more enslaved than the ancient Hebrews, more servile than the Persians, more scattered than the Athenians after their defeats. She stands without a unifying head, without coherent order, beaten, stripped of her wealth, torn apart by internal strife, and ravaged by external forces. The land we call home has been a constant stage for cruelty, a theater of misfortune and humiliation. All of Italy is ripe for a deliverer, a leader with the courage and vision to unify her fractured states, and cast out foreign powers who desecrate her soil. Machiavelli points to the grand historical precedents, drawing our attention to legendary figures who rose magnificently from similar depths of adversity. Think of Moses, who found the Israelites in abject bondage and, guided by divine will, led them with unwavering resolve to freedom. Consider Cyrus the Great, who witnessed the Persians oppressed, and, through his extraordinary leadership, inspired them to conquer their oppressors and forge a vast empire. Reflect on Theseus, the mythical hero who liberated the Athenians from the brutal tyranny of Minos. These were not just lucky men, they were men who acutely recognized and seized truly opportune moments, men who profoundly understood that the true test of leadership lies not merely in the cold acquisition of power, but in its courageous and strategic wielding for a grand, unifying purpose far beyond individual ambition. Their circumstances, mirroring Italy's current plight, presented a clear, undeniable path, an urgent need for decisive action. And so, he argues with conviction, the grand stage is now perfectly set. Every condition, every star in the firmament, seems to align flawlessly for a new prince to emerge as Italy's savior. The heavens themselves, it appears, have actively arranged events to favor a new and glorious order. There is no fundamental lack of courage or inherent capacity among the Italian people themselves. What has been tragically missing is a true leader, someone with the profound foresight, the unwavering strength, and the tactical genius to gather these dispersed national energies and direct them forcefully towards a common, unifying, and ultimately glorious goal. This isn't just about intricate political maneuvering anymore, it transcends mere statecraft. It is, in Machiavelli's impassioned view, about a nation's very destiny. This is precisely why Machiavelli turns his gaze directly and hopefully to the illustrious house of Medici, specifically addressing Lorenzo, the Magnificent. He sees in this powerful and influential family not merely another ruling dynasty, but a potential instrument of divine providence, chosen for a higher calling. This is the moment, he insists, for the Medici to rise above the ordinary, to emulate the great liberators of old, and to etch their name into the annals of history. This is their unparalleled chance to demonstrate true and lasting greatness, not just by holding on to power within Florence, but by courageously using that power to answer Italy's desperate, prolonged call for freedom. Power, in this final, impassioned vision, is emphatically not an end in itself. It is the utterly essential means to achieve a profound national redemption, a rebirth of the entire peninsula. The purpose of power, then, as he articulates it so powerfully here, transcends mere personal ambition or the pragmatic maintenance of one's own state. It becomes a sacred trust, a formidable tool to create enduring order out of chaos, to establish a unified and sovereign nation, and to secure a glorious future for all Italians, generations to come. It is about forging a cohesive, proud identity from centuries of fragmentation, about building formidable strength from perceived weakness, and ultimately, about leaving an indelible mark on history that speaks not of petty squabbles, but of monumental liberation and unparalleled greatness. This isn't about mere survival in a hostile world, it's about truly thriving, about achieving a true and lasting peace through unwavering strength, unity, and courageous action. Therefore, Machiavelli concludes, let this precious moment not pass by unheeded. Let this extraordinary opportunity, so clearly presented by the heavens and so urgently demanded by the ceaseless suffering of the Italian people, be grasped with both hands, with all the vigor and intelligence one can muster. It is time for a prince to rise, to bravely take up this noble and historic cause, and to lead Italy to her much-deserved freedom, unity, and eternal glory. The path is clear, the need is immediate and urgent, and the ultimate reward, the everlasting gratitude and adoration of a liberated, unified nation awaits. Let us seize this opportune moment and bear witness to the glorious rebirth of a truly great Italy. Welcome to the 7-day Machiavellian Action Plan, a practical framework designed to translate the enduring wisdom of 16th-century statecraft into a powerful, modern, personal strategy. Forget the historical battles and political intrigues for a moment, and consider how Machiavelli's profound insights into power, influence, and leadership can be applied directly to your own life, your career, and your relationships. This isn't about manipulation, but about clarity, strategic thinking, and decisive action in a world that often demands both subtlety and strength. We begin our journey with days 1 and 2, a crucial period dedicated to auditing your alliances. In Machiavelli's world, a prince's strength was often measured by the loyalty and reliability of his allies. For us, this translates to understanding the true nature of our personal and professional connections. Over these 2 days, I urge you to take a deliberate, dispassionate look at your network. Who genuinely relies on you? What aspects of your skills, your resources, your support, or your presence are truly indispensable to others? Conversely, who do you find yourself consistently relying upon? What are the key dependencies in your life, be they professional collaborations, personal support systems, or even outsourced tasks? This isn't about severing ties or fostering suspicion, but rather about gaining clarity. It's about understanding the architecture of your influence and your vulnerabilities, identifying where your strength truly lies and where you might be overly exposed. By mapping these interdependencies, you begin to see the true landscape of your power and the potential leverage points within your sphere. This foundation is essential, allowing you to build from a place of awareness, rather than assumption. As we move into days 3 and 4, it's time to practice the art of the fox. Machiavelli famously advised a prince to be both a lion and a fox. While the lion represents brute force and courage, the fox embodies cunning, intelligence, and the ability to avoid traps. For these 2 days, embrace the role of the observant fox. This means strategic silence, active listening, and meticulous observation. Rather than reacting impulsively, pause. Watch for unspoken motives, subtle cues, and overlooked opportunities. Understand the terrain before you make your next move. Concurrently, these days are dedicated to identifying one specific area in your life where you can begin to cut reliance on mercenaries. In Machiavellian terms, mercenaries are those who serve for pay, not loyalty, and are often unreliable in times of true need. In our modern context, this might translate to outsourcing critical tasks, delegating responsibilities that you truly should master yourself, or depending on external resources that do not share your long-term vision or commitment. Think about a core function or a significant responsibility that you've habitually handed off. How can you start to internalize that capability? How can you begin to build your own inherent strength in that area, reducing your vulnerability to external, potentially fleeting, support? This step is about cultivating self-sufficiency and ensuring that vital aspects of your life are anchored by your own robust capabilities, not by transient external assistance. Finally, we arrive at days 5, 6, and 7, the time for the decisive lion move. Having audited your alliances and practiced the cunning of the fox, it is now time to embody the courage and authority of the lion. Machiavelli understood that a prince must, at times, act decisively and even ruthlessly to establish and maintain his authority. For you, over these 3 days, this means identifying one significant, difficult decision that you have been avoiding. This isn't about minor adjustments or easy choices. It's about a complex, high-stakes decision that requires conviction, courage, and a clear vision. This could be setting a firm boundary, making a tough professional call, initiating a challenging conversation, or committing to a new direction that others might find intimidating. The purpose of this lion move is not aggression for aggression's sake, but to demonstrate your resolve and establish your authority. By making this difficult decision, you do more than just solve a problem. You fundamentally shift perceptions. You signal to yourself and to others that you are a force to be reckoned with, a leader who acts rather than equivocates, who faces challenges head-on rather than deferring them. This decisive action will not only address the immediate issue, but will also solidify your position, earning you respect and demonstrating your capacity for strong, effective leadership in your own sphere. This is the ultimate demonstration of true principality in your personal domain. Having journeyed through Machiavelli's stark and practical advice, let's distill its essence into 3 fundamental takeaways. These ideas are designed to stick with you, offering a direct path to understanding the heart of the prince, the core principles upon which successful, lasting power is built, stripped bare of idealistic illusions. First, and perhaps most infamously, Machiavelli presents the principle that the ends justify the means. This is not an endorsement of wanton cruelty, but a cold, hard truth about effective leadership. For a prince, the ultimate goal is the preservation and stability of his state, and the well-being of his people under that stable rule. When difficult choices arise, an action's effectiveness is measured by its outcome, not its inherent moral purity. If a seemingly harsh or unethical action ultimately leads to greater security, unity, and strength for the state, it is deemed a necessary and good action in the Machiavellian sense. The common people, he argues, judge by results. If a ruler maintains peace and order, providing for his subjects, his methods are often forgiven or forgotten. This understanding suggests that a ruler's morality sometimes operates on a different plane, where the supreme virtue is the survival and prosperity of the state itself, above personal scruples. Moving on, our second vital takeaway emphasizes adaptability. A prince must know how to be both the man and the beast. Machiavelli explains that while laws and treaties, the tools of the man, are effective, there are times when they fall short. In such moments, a prince must be prepared to embrace the raw cunning and force of the animal kingdom. He counsels emulating the fox and the lion. Be a fox to recognize traps, using cleverness and deception when necessary, outsmarting adversaries. Be a lion to frighten off wolves, using sheer power and intimidation when diplomacy fails. This isn't about constant brutality or deceit. It's about possessing the flexibility and strategic wisdom to switch between these modes instantaneously. A ruler who is only a man might be easily outmaneuvered. One who is only a beast might alienate his subjects. True mastery lies in assessing the situation and adopting the persona, human or animal, that yields the most effective outcome for the state. Finally, we arrive at the third cornerstone, the absolute necessity of self-reliance, rooted in your own virtue and your own arms. Machiavelli vehemently warns against relying on mercenaries or auxiliary troops, soldiers borrowed from another power, or even too heavily on the caprice of fortune. These external supports are inherently unreliable. Mercenaries lack loyalty and auxiliaries serve their own masters, potentially turning against you. True and lasting power, he insists, comes from within. It emanates from the prince's own virtue, a complex mix of skill, courage, foresight, and capability, and from his own well-trained, loyal army of his own citizens. A state built on its own strengths, resources, and military might is resilient and secure, standing on firm ground. A ruler who cultivates his own abilities and commands his own forces is truly sovereign, capable of shaping his destiny, rather than being tossed by fate or the whims of others. This self-sufficiency is the bedrock for successful rule, ensuring independence and longevity.